Hey guys, welcome to the Jill Greenberg Effect Pro tutorial. I'm super excited about this tutorial. We've got a lot of great resources for you guys, and let's go ahead and get started with this tutorial. First I'm going to talk to you guys about lighting and how we actually did the shot, and then we're going to do quite a bit with Photoshop and retouching, and we'll provide you guys with brushes and all kinds of other cool stuff. So let's talk about our lighting. Well, this is our shot that we're going to start with here. This is Angela Butler, who works for Flern and was one of in a series we did for the 4th of July, and we're going to be turning this into an awesome Jill Greenberg style effect. So here's our lighting, provided to you by lightingdiagram.com. It's a really cool site. You can make these lighting diagrams. I figured it'd help you guys out. So let's talk about what we did with our lighting. And first of all, our subject is standing in the middle. I'm going to explain what all these things are. We had our subjects eating popsicles because it was the 4th of July, and they're like the red, white, and blue popsicles. We thought it'd be a little bit more fun if we added some wind onto these people. So we've got wind machines coming from the right and the left. Now these are commercial style wind machine looking things. We actually use leaf blowers. You can buy them at Lowe's or Home Depot for like 40 bucks. Use the electric powered ones. The gas powered ones will put gasoline in the air, and if you're in a studio, you don't want to do that. But I have gotten some regular blowers like this sort of thing, but I actually like the leaf blowers a little bit better. So those are kind of blowing the hair around. We've got three strip boxes really. We've got a strip box here on the left side, one here on the right side, and one here on the top, and this is above our subject. So let's just show you guys what those are doing. The left side is creating this rim that you see here. There we go, all across there. That's what that's doing. The right side one, you can't really see much of a rim. It's there, basically her hair is kind of blocking it, but that is producing this light that's there. And the top rim is what's going on right there. So those are the three rims. All right, we also have a background light, and this is just a 7-degree spot grid, or 7-inch reflector with a 40-degree spot grid, and that's shining on the background. What that does is that creates this kind of like light. So this is basically straight out of the camera, guys. There's not any Photoshop done to this photo. That creates this light glow that's right behind your subject, and it just goes to black. You can see it gets pretty dark there. The reason why this is light up there, this is actually like flare from the gridded strip boxes here. You can get rid of that by using a flag. Most of the photos actually didn't have this because the lens was a little bit more zoomed in. When we zoomed it out, it had this. So we probably should have used a flag, but we're going to be cropping that off. So it's not a huge deal in this case anyway. Okay, so that takes care of our lights behind our subject. Now the lights in front of our subject, we have a large octabox that's really low to the ground here, and it's kind of shining up at our subject. So it's probably maybe 6 inches above the ground, shining up towards the subject. And that's creating a fill, and the ratios, these are all, we're shooting at f16, so if these are all f16, it was either 14 or 16. These would all be like, 16, 16, 16, and this would be like f10 or 8 probably. I actually did not meter this one. I just kind of went by look. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll get all my lights about where I know they should be, especially the more important lights like these guys, and then you just kind of like up it, bump up the power or down the power based on look. So in the end, there's not really any rules. As long as it looks good, like that's the whole point of everything. So the numbers aren't that important unless, they help you get to a good starting point, and then from there you can adjust to taste. It's kind of like a recipe for creating a pie. You just use the ingredients and then you can make it your own. Okay, so those are BF16, and this would be probably like F5.6, so quite a bit under. You just want to include like a little bit of light so it's not dark on your subject's front. And then we also have this other light, which is kind of something, I've never tried this before, but it created another catch light in the subject eyes, and this is directly to the right of our octabox here. So creating a catch light in the subject's eyes, as well as just providing another light source right up front. So that's our lighting diagram for this shot. Let's go ahead and switch back, and I'll talk about, there we go. You can see the hard light that's right here. There we go. That hard light, that hard shadow rather, is from that small 7-inch reflector that's kind of shining right there. If her eyes were open, you'd see that catch light, and then she's lit kind of from the underside as well. So this is straight out of the camera, and we're gonna rock on with this. All right, let's go ahead and delete those 2 layers. And now I want to talk about our references. All right. There we go. And we're going to bring in some references. So this is, definitely inspired by a Jill Greenberg type of setup. And these are Jill Greenberg's photos. If you haven't seen her work, it's very cool. She's got a very, well, most people know her work. She's got a very cool style, and she did this series, Making Babies Cry. We didn't do that, but we did kind of work with similar lighting and things like that. And half of the effect is done with lighting, and then the other half of the effect is done in Photoshop with the retouching and things like that. So I'm going to bring these references in. Like, I'm not going to edit Jill Greenberg's work or anything like that, but using references is it's not anything that I would stay away from. In fact, using references is a good thing, in my opinion, whether you're drawing or painting or, editing in photographs or things like that. These are just, they'll help you kind of get the idea and the look that you want in a photograph. So I am all for using references, and I think you guys should be too. Okay, first thing I want to do, let's go ahead and crop this image in a little bit because it's way too much is included right now. I want my subject to be, the focal point of the image, and there's just too much that's included. So we're going to grab our crop tool, and I'm just going to click here and drag that right on down, and then we're going to bring that up from the bottom. All right, there we go, something like that. Looking pretty good. So we're going to hit enter, and there's our crop. Now, one thing, I am looking for in the crop, people love horizontal lines. So whenever you're doing composition, something like that, there's a nice horizontal line that's happening. Not horizontal, I apologize. A diagonal line. Diagonals are used all the time in composition, and this is creating a nice diagonal from her hand through the popsicle to her mouth and then on to the back of her hair. So that's one of the reasons why I cropped it like this, because without that, the diagonal wasn't as prominent, and you can see the composition is pretty good here. All right, so that's the beginning of the style. Let's talk about what Jill Greenberg's kind of style these, and then we're going to get to editing. So basically, we have a lot of the skin here is really, really smooth. The skin on all these photographs is really smooth for two reasons. One, because they're babies, and babies have smooth skin, but the other reason is because they've been retouched. The thing that sets these apart is a lot of the time when you have smooth skin on your subject, you're going to have you're going to wind up with skin that looks a little bit flat. Like if you've seen editing that, it looks like super smooth skin, but the skin just looks flat. Like it doesn't look like you have any like detail, highlights and shadows and things like that. So that's kind of like, this is the opposite of that. And the skin smoothing where everything looks flat is a lot easier to do. This is a lot harder to do. But I'm going to show you guys how to do it. So you're going to be able to do it too. So basically, what we need to do is smooth out all the skin first and then come back and add all this detail over top, and that's what's going to give us our effect. And then we're going to work a lot with like lighting and color and that sort of thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and just group all those. Those will be our references, and we're going to start off by smoothing some skin details and things like that. So I'm going to make a new layer, and we're just going to start off with a regular healing brush tool. So healing brush tool, we want to make sure we sample current and below, and I'm just going to zoom in and start taking care of little details. And again, this is for a specific effect that we're doing here. So all these little details, I guess I painted on the background there with my paintbrush on accident. Let me just make sure I didn't paint it anywhere else. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to zoom out because I painted on there on accident with my paintbrush. What you can do is go to Window, down here to History, and you can just take this back to the open state. So this is the open state here. You can see back on your history like this, but if you just go all the way back and click on this one, that'll take you back to the very beginning. But we have our open state. All right, cool. We have our references and things like that, so I can get those back if I need to. All right, so let's start on a new layer, and I'm just going to start with this healing brush tool, and we're going to start basically taking just about everything away. And this is, I would recommend you guys do this first. I'm including an action as well that's going to really help you guys do some cool stuff in Photoshop. It's a really good skin retouching action that is necessary to do this effect that we're going to use here today. And you guys can use it basically on anything you want. But what I'm trying to do is, get rid of all these little details. I don't really want to get rid of every little detail. I basically just want to, get rid of the things like this sort of thing. If someone has like you know, moles or things like that, I really recommend you guys leave that sort of thing, because that's a permanent addition to what the person is. But if it's like a little pimple or something like that, you can take that away, because that's a little bit more ephemeral. If it's not going to be there, you know, in a week or two, I usually don't have a problem taking that away in Photoshop. But if it's something that's permanent, I usually leave it. And that's what makes people interesting too. All right, so we're just going to get rid of a couple little things like this. There we go. And this is definitely, I would say, the first step. Always do this first before you start in. If you notice, her skin's a little bit shiny here. This is, you know, without any Photoshop, her skin does look a little shiny. And because we knew to start with that we wanted this kind of shiny skin effect, we actually sprayed everyone with just water, like a standard spray bottle. We just sprayed everyone with water, and it helped make their skin a little bit more shiny, which added to this effect. You can use like baby oil and things like that, but we just use water. Okay, this area, it's a water drop, but it kind of looks like a skin kind of thing. So I'm gonna get rid of this because I think it just takes away a little bit more than it needs to. There we go. And that doesn't look good at all. So I'm gonna erase that again, and we're gonna try it again. All right, not everything you do is gonna look great the first time. Just want to be careful when you're doing healing brush or things like that, that you kind of take away, you know, you sample skin that's relatively close to what you actually want to paint. So you're not, you know, I wouldn't want to sample over here, for instance, because it, you know, you can see it doesn't look anything like that. You just want to kind of sample it in, kind of do a couple quick brush strokes. So I'm doing this relatively close, zoomed in, and I'm about to zoom out and get a little bit better of a sense of what we're doing here. So zooming in close is really great for, you know, working on the pore level, but working on the pore level is actually a little bit less important than a lot of people who first start retouching realize. I mean, if it's like some, you know, big pimples that need to be taken care of, definitely get those. But it's a lot more important actually to work on the global level, and that's what this tutorial is more about, is working on the global level rather than the pore level. Because if it's zoomed out, or honestly, like if you put these on Facebook, they're so small, you can't even see people's pores anyway, so it doesn't really matter what those pores look like to a degree, you know, unless they do affect the global level as well. All right, so I'll show you guys what I mean by the pore global level. So here at the pore level, you know, you can see I took care of some of those things. Like you can tell a difference, but there's some things at the global level that we need to take care of also. Let's just take care of that little stuff on the sensor there. Okay, so what's going on with the global level? Let me talk about that. That's more of like the large kind of ups and downs that we're working with, and that's a little bit more of the important stuff. Stuff like this here, you can see we've got highlight, and then we've got shadow, but in between it we've got another highlight and then a shadow and then a highlight, where it should kind of just go smooth all the way across. So that's what we're going to focus on doing, is making those transitions a little bit cleaner. Anytime you have highlight, shadow, highlight, shadow, highlight, shadow, if you can kind of smooth those out so where you just have highlight to shadow, just like, you know, it'll look a lot more smooth and give you the transition you want. So that's more of the global level, and those things you really can't see them. Like if I'm zoomed in here, like I can't really see that this needs to be taken care of. Not really. If I zoom way out, you can definitely see it a lot better. Like, oh, okay, there's something there that I need to work on real quick. So I would recommend you guys do zoom out a little bit more than maybe you think you need to. Okay, we do need to recrop again. I'm cropping at the beginning for a couple of reasons, and you know, first of those being, I just don't want to work on areas that are going to wind up being, you know, not even part of the image. There we go. All right, that looks pretty good. So what we're going to do is we're going to take care of a lot of those global things, but before we do this, we're going to apply an action, and I'm going to give you this action. Basically, it just makes a duplicate of the background layer, makes like a stamp visible. It blurs that, and then it adds like a high pass filter over top. And this is just a way to make it really easy to retouch, like I'm about to show you. So we're going to go to window, and let's see, go to actions, and you guys can just load up this action that I sent you. It's called the alternate high pass. So we're going to hit play, and it's just going to do its thing. We can close this out now. And here's what this does. It creates if you turn this off and on, like you really shouldn't notice the difference. Turning the whole group off and on, it should look the exact same. But what it does is it creates a blur layer underneath, okay? And then it creates this high pass layer set to linear light, which just adds that detail back. What's really nice is you have the detail here. You can actually go in between these two layers and start painting with just a regular old paintbrush. And that's what's gonna help you to create this effect. So this is the first part. Remember we talked about first you have to smooth the skin out and then kind of enhance the detail. So this will be the smoothing the skin out step that we were talking about. So let's just create a new layer here, and we're gonna grab our brush tool. I'm gonna right click and go choose this brush that I sent you guys. It's a 450 pixel brush, and I'm gonna choose my opacity of 100% and my flow. I'm gonna hit Shift 1, and that's gonna make my flow 10%. Now this is something that if you guys are not using a tablet of any type, like I'm using a Intuos 4, if you guys like have a bamboo or something like that, that's totally cool. If you're not using a tablet, this is going to be a very, very hard effect for you to do. You definitely can do it. It's just going to take longer and it's going to require more effort. So I'm going to just write myself a note. In the literature for this tutorial, I'm going to link to a couple tablets that I would recommend you get. Like the bamboo tablet is, it's like $60 or $70. It's not that bad, and it'll make doing this stuff a lot easier for you. So I would recommend getting a tablet if you are serious about doing some skin retouching. Okay, so what we're going to do here is basically a technique that I call sample and paint, and it's really simple, and it's just kind of how you decide to finesse your brush and things like that. You're going to need to know a couple of things before we start. So first is holding down Control and Option on a Mac, or it's going to be Control and Alt on a PC. Hold those two buttons down, and you can drag to the left and the right, and that's just going to make your brush larger or smaller real quick. That's really nice. You can drag up and down, and that's going to make your brush harder and softer. So down is harder, up is softer, left is smaller, right is larger. And that's just, it's really nice to know. I'm not going to make my brush too hard, but I am going to make it larger and smaller, like kind of on the fly. So if you see me doing it, that's what I'm doing there. Okay, the next thing you need to know is with your brush tool, if you hold just Alt or Option, you can sample colors. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sampling a color and then basically painting in that area, and then sampling another color and painting in another area. So you're kind of blending. And let me just kind of show you guys just a quick little preview of what we're talking about here. All right, let's just grab a couple colors, and all right, and I'm gonna hit Shift 7, bring my flow up. So I'm gonna just grab a couple different colors, and we'll just pretend that these are, skin areas of skin that don't look right. Okay, with the sample and painting that we're talking about, let's bring our flow down to about 10% and bring your brush nice and large. What we're going to do is like kind of just sample a color here and then paint a little bit over there, and then sample this color and kind of like paint it back. Okay, and then sample this color and paint it over, and sample that color and paint it back. So kind of going back and forth with this, and it just makes it really easy to kind of like blend colors. And you can see like I'm doing this completely naturally. It's not like, it doesn't look contrived. It looks like a natural progression from one color to another one. From green to the blue to the orange, which is really nice. Nice smooth transitions, and that's kind of what we're doing. That's the idea of the skin retouching, is basically you just sample one area, and there we go. You can see that doesn't look too bad. You can sample one area and kind of paint it back and forth. Okay, so that's our goal here. We're going to be sampling one area and kind of painting it back and forth. So I'm going to sample like right here. And generally I try to choose a brush that's a little bit like larger than you might think you need. And I'm just going to go with a hardness of like 0 to 10, a relatively low hardness with this brush. And this is just for the skin kind of smoothing. So we're going to sample over here. And then to get rid of that thing, I'm just going to like paint a little bit. And then I'm going to sample up there and paint a little bit. Sample down there and paint a little bit. All right. And sample over there and paint a little bit. There we go. And there we go. See, if you sample the wrong color and then start painting, you're going to get something like that, which like that does not look good. So you want to kind of be careful. And that's why I keep my flow at about 10%. So it just, it keeps you from doing that sort of thing. It's really better to zoom out when you do this sort of thing. Now I want a little bit of lightness there, so I'm going to sample that color and paint that a little bit lighter. There we go. Sample this and paint a little bit lighter. So let's just turn this off and on, and we can see what we've got. It just, kind of smooths the skin out. Because this layer up here is the detail layer, you still have detail where that skin is, which is really nice. And so you're not really destroying detail here, you're just kind of smoothing everything out. And if I just move this layer over there, like that's what the layer looks like. It's nothing, nothing crazy. It's just like literally it's just color that I just painted on a new layer. So hit Control Z to move that back, and you guys can see like that's basically the idea that we're going to take across the entire image. And again, keep your flow really low. If you guys are using a mouse, I would recommend having a flow of like 5%. And if you haven't done this technique ever or not many times, again, maybe use a lower flow, something like 5%. If you guys are more comfortable with this sort of thing, 10% is what I would recommend. All right, and generally you just want to choose, like this is a small little detail area. So if I want to do some blending in this area, we'll choose a small brush. This area is such a large area that I'd like to choose a larger brush for my blending, because it wouldn't make sense if I'm like, using this and trying to like blend here and then a little bit over here. It makes a lot more sense to just, cover kind of a large area as you're going on. So one thing I like to do is just kind of like zoom in and out and move this around to kind of like figure out what we're doing here. Just so you can see kind of like those larger areas. So like here for the eyes, we're going to make our brush nice and small, sample some colors right around there, and start painting in there. So again, this is the smoothing process. We haven't started with like the dodging and burning. I wouldn't consider this like dodging and burning. This is more just giving us like a clean palette to work with. I'm also trying to go with the directionality of the skin here. So like this skin is kind of like, you can see there's detail, like this is going up that way, that's going up that way, that's going up that way. So it wouldn't make sense for me to paint left and right here. It'd make a lot more sense for me to go up and down. Depending on how you guys work, it might actually help you guys in some areas. I know it does me, to rotate my canvas around. Like going up and down might be a little bit difficult for you, especially if you're on a mouse. So you can use your rotate tool, just hit R for rotate, and kind of just rotate this around, and now you can go left to right, like on a person's face, and you just rotate it all around. You can go left to right, and it'll be like, it'll be like you're painting up and down, and that'll make it easier. So I'm gonna hold down Shift and bring this back. All right, we're gonna go back to the brush tool, and I'm gonna start painting again in here. There we go. And you just want to be sure to like keep the dark areas dark. Like we're trying to lessen the transitions here, but definitely keep the dark areas dark. The goal here is not to like make a person look like they have no detail in their skin. In fact, you want the opposite. We're going to wind up enhancing the detail and the highlights and the shadows and everything like that. So it's a little bit smaller here. You can see I kind of zoomed in, and I'm choosing some colors here that I right around the eye, and just kind of like smoothing that over a little bit. All right, and for this tutorial, I'm not going to go too quick on this, because I think it's important to like show you guys how to actually do this. And this step is one of the more important steps. It's probably not the hardest step, but it's important. So don't expect to do this in like 2 minutes. Because I've been working in Photoshop a long time, and it takes me 10-20 minutes to do this well. So don't if it takes you a while, don't worry about it. It's not you, it's just that it takes a while, because you're basically repainting someone's face. All right, let's turn this off and on, and you can start to see the effect really is making a difference. I'm just smoothing out the skin, which is really nice. And the longer you spend on this, the more of an impact you can have, which can be better or it can be worse, to be honest. It just depends on like how much care you're spending with this too. It can be really easy to like flatten people out, take away all the detail. Like that area, I just kind of took away that detail on accident, so I'm going to sample this dark color and kind of paint it back. All right, and that's that's mainly what you want to avoid, is just flattening people out. There we go. We'll sample this color. Another thing that I like to do is look for like continuous shapes and lines. Like this is, you know, a nice continuous shape that comes all the way up here and wraps there. See, we have a highlight starting there, coming all the way down and going up there. So you can kind of exaggerate that highlight to come up there. We got another one here, you know, another here on the forehead and things like this. I'm just looking for light areas and dark areas. And that's how we're going to go through and exaggerate that. So there we go. These light areas, they're all going to get exaggerated. But that'll be more in like the dodging and burning phase. Exaggerate that dark in there. There we go. All right, cool. So you can see our skin detail remains even after we do all this. All right, and again, more of the same. Sampling and then painting over again. And the goal is to just have all these little, you know, the little transitions, you want them to kind of go away. You want your big transitions to remain. I hope that makes sense for you guys, because it's, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, but that's the best I can explain it. Like the little ups and downs, the little shadow and highlight transitions, you want those to all go away. The big stuff, like the, you know, what's going on with their mouth, like you wouldn't ever want to get rid of that, because it's, you know, pretty important to the structure of her face, and also it's, you know, it's what makes it cool. All right, so I can kind of shape this. See how that highlight comes up a little too far? I could just sample a little dark color there and kind of paint that in. There we go. Kind of smooth that out a little bit. All right, and we'll kind of come on down with that. We're going to do the same with her neck as well. Just kind of sample these colors. Sample the lights. And again, you wouldn't want to like sample this light and like paint over that. See how if you go too much, like you lose all that nice skin detail? Don't do that. You know, sample this. That's like a transition area there from the light. Then you kind of have a crease into dark. You can kind of take care of that just like this. Sample and then paint, kind of fade them in. So you really do have the power to completely shape a person's face. So keep in mind that this is, you know, it will wind up being very powerful. So it's up to you to not mess it up, basically. That's your goal, is to make this, just to not mess this up. All right, and so we have a highlight area. I'm just gonna paint a little bit in the highlight. And you can kind of exaggerate. You can see like I'm kind of exaggerating what's going on here with the neck. We're going to save a lot of the exaggeration for the highlight, you know, for the dodging and burning, but you can definitely do it here with just your brush tool as well. All right, let's just zoom in. Some of this stuff I probably could have taken care with the healing brush. So we're going to do that on the top of this layer. I'm going to just take care of some of this area with a healing brush. Hit J for your healing brush tool. There we go. Let's take care of this stuff as well. All right. Actually, I'm going to put that down here, and then we're going to make another layer. You can make as many of these layers as you want, by the way. It really doesn't matter. You could just keep on making more and more and more of them. You know, if you're happy with what you've done on one layer, I'd recommend like saving that, and just like creating a new layer, especially like if you're going to work on an area that is a little bit more difficult. Like the ear, you know, if you're happy with the ear and then you think you might want to make a little bit of a change to it, you can definitely make a new layer and just kind of like come back over top of it. And that'll kind of give you like an undo. Like you can just undo what you did with someone's ear pretty easily if you just create a new layer and you're like, yeah, I don't really like what I just did. There we go. Like, so you could just undo or redo that if you wanted by making it invisible or not visible again. All right, we're definitely looking better and better. Let's just create another layer, kind of do the same thing over here as well. And choose a nice big brush for these transitions because they're, you know, it's a large space, a large relatively, you know, non-detailed space. There's not a whole lot of highlight and shadow here. So you can use a large brush to kind of take care of that. All right, and we'll create another layer for like the hand here. And so, you know, if we have a highlight area, then a shadow area, then a highlight area, like I want to keep that. Like, so I'll sample the shadow area. We'll just kind of paint this in, and then we'll sample the highlight area and kind of, you know, bring those two together so it's a little bit more smooth. But like, I wouldn't want to just sample this highlight and just paint it over there. Like that's, we want to keep the detail that's there. So anytime you have a transition from a highlight to shadow, just like I showed earlier up here with the different colors, you want to keep that effect as well. You don't want to get rid of the highlights and shadows. You just want to kind of smooth the boundaries between them. All right, and most of what we want to focus on here is going to be her face. So that's where I'm going to draw most of my attention. Even inside the mouth. All right, definitely looking a bit better. We can go in, you know, take care of other little details. All right, now we're going to zoom out and just kind of see like if there's anything that kind of we missed or anywhere that we've changed our face too much, we want to bring it back. So this comes a little bit too far to the right, in my opinion. Just kind of looking at that, I could smooth this out. See, it looks kind of like a little bit harder of a line, like almost like there's a crease there. So we're just going to take that out here. I'll show you guys how to do that. So we'll new layer. Again, we'll just grab a nice large brush, same like we did before. Grab on the right side of this and kind of fade it in. The left side of that, fade that in. So really quick, you can see you just kind of like take what kind of looked like a little bit of a crease and fade that out so it's a lot smoother now. All right, and we're going to continue to do the same thing from kind of like zoomed out here. Just make sure all the, you know, elements of the face connect. Cool. And in a second, I'll show you guys the before and after. So with this sort of effect, like if you do it right, you shouldn't really see like a crazy amount of transitioning happening like right before your eyes. It should be like pretty subtle and you're like, I don't even know if this is doing anything. That's if you're doing it correctly. Like it really should be subtle. Like you should kind of see like, okay, I guess this is doing something. But then, you know, when you look at the original versus what you've done, it really should show quite a big difference. So that's the idea. It's kind of like, it's supposed to be like a gradual change. There we go. Okay, let's look at the before and the after with that. So all that we did, you can see, like it was gradual. We still have the skin detail, which is nice, and it really does make a difference on the overall image. Just kind of changes everything, and this is our, again, like our skin smoothing detail that kind of brings everything together. And this is, you know, giving us a little bit more of a cleaner canvas to work with. Awesome. And I don't think you guys will have a problem doing this. It's really not that hard. It's kind of fun, actually. You know, anytime you see it's just like too much of a transition, like that was a little too dark there, just sample a little bit lighter and paint over it. It's not very hard. You just don't want to destroy all your detail. That is a no-no. There we go. We'll bring that opacity down a little bit. Okay, cool. So that's the before and the after with that. You can see quite a bit of change that you can make there. So let's go ahead and group all those layers. These are all the skin retouching layers. And I'm just going to, let's make a new layer under that. I'm just going to make this black. There we go. So you can see, like literally we did paint someone's face. This is painted on there. So this is all done with a brush tool. So really by sampling, I mean, if you kept on going, you could take away this original image and you really would have a person's face. So that's basically the, you know, the effect that we made, which is kind of cool. Let's just delete this black layer around. We'll just move it over so you can see like that. We just hand painted all that. So in case you guys are wondering, that's how it's done. You could do a lot with a paintbrush, and we're about to do a lot more with a paintbrush. Okay, so that's getting our start. The next thing I want to do is kind of go in and figure out our highlights and our shadow areas, and that's what's going to be enhanced through this step. So this is where the effect starts to really take shape, is through the dodging and the burning. And for the dodging and burning, what you want to do is figure out your highlight and your shadow areas. So let's just make a color here and we'll talk about this. Okay, so our highlight areas like this, you generally just want to go with you know, what the image already has to offer. Don't try to paint your own highlights and shadows in places that it doesn't, you know, that they shouldn't go or they don't exist, because it won't really make any sense. It won't really look good. Okay, so a highlight area, you can see like that's a highlight area. That's looking pretty good. We have a small highlight area there, one there, you know, one there, here. Even, you know, stuff like this we have as well. And for this type of image, it doesn't hurt at all to kind of enhance this sort of thing, because it's supposed to have enhanced highlights and shadows on it. Like that's kind of the idea. You're not supposed to have like super smooth, like the skin is smooth, but we want to you know, enhance the highlights and shadows. So there's a highlight right there, another one right there, another right there, another right there. All these highlight areas, you know, big highlight area there, there. You can see them. And if not, then I'm circling them all, so you don't have to see them. Even in the ears. The trick is to just get all of them. Get all your highlight areas. That was not a highlight. Even in the hand and things like that too. Highlight areas. And now we'll look at the shadow areas with blue, and then we're going to darken those up. So like there's a shadow area, there's a shadow area, shadow area. Even like here is a shadow area. It's right on the other side of a highlight, shadow area. There we go. Same thing here on the underside of that. Generally, you're gonna always find a shadow right on the other side of a highlight. Like that's just how it works. Highlight, and then right on the other side of it is a shadow. Highlight, and then a shadow. And in fact, your shadows are usually darkest right near highlights. So like in this case, we have a highlight there, and then this direct shadow right there. So it's good to know. Okay, so I'm not going to circle all of the shadow areas. You guys can see them, but that's basically what our goal is, to go in and enhance all of our highlight detail and our shadow detail. Something like that, which is kind of fun. Okay, so we're going to do this again below the skin detail level, because we just want to be sure to include that. Okay, so I'm going to make a new layer here, and you can do this in a number of ways. You can make a new 50% gray layer, switch that to soft light if you want. You don't have to do that. You can just create a regular layer, switch it to soft light, and that'll work too. I'm just going to choose a 50% gray layer because it's going to be easier to show you guys how to do this. So I'm going to hit Shift Backspace, Shift Delete. That's going to bring up your fill dialog, and I'm going to hit Use 50% gray. All right, we're going to hit OK. Fills with 50% gray. This is that detail layer that's above it. So there's nothing on this layer. It's just gray. This is the layer that's above it. We're going to change this layer from normal to soft light, and it's going to go completely invisible. And now we want to just do some dodging and burning. So again, we're going to go brush tool, Shift 1 to go with a flow of 10%. I really recommend you guys use flow instead of opacity here. Really recommend you use flow, especially with this brush that I've provided. If you guys are using opacity, the brush is not going to perform like it should. because it's flow basically transfers. Let me just talk about this really quick. Flow at 10% is like, if I go over it once, that's what it does. But if I come back over it and over it and over it again, it's going to build up. I haven't let go of this. Okay. And you can just kind of like build up your effect. And if you press really soft, your flow is going to be low. If I press hard, my flow is going to be a little bit higher. That's kind of built in to how this brush is made. All right, let's talk about opacity real quick. Opacity, let's just change this to like 50% and flow to 100%. Opacity is like you just go over it and now it's all 50%. And if I keep going over it and over it again, like it's not going to get any more than 50%. So you got to lift your brush up and then start painting over again. You get another 50%. You got to lift your brush up again, start painting over again, and you'll get another 50%. Do it again and again and again. And it's just not really that efficient, and it doesn't allow like a very smooth, nice gradient. You can see like I'm having a lot of trouble blending that from that to that. So I really recommend that you use flow instead of opacity for your control of this sort of thing. Okay, and we're going to be painting with black and white. So I'm on a 50% layer. It's set to soft light. We're painting with white and we're painting with black. And I'm just going to start on and kind of painting in these details. Again, following the areas of highlight and shadow that naturally occur with this photo. And using the brush, the size of my brush, I want to be about the same size as the highlights. So if I'm going to paint a nose highlight, I would definitely not use this size brush. I would go down to something about there and probably zoom in. A cheek highlight, you know, something right there. An arm highlight, probably something around there. There's a wild dog in the studio, or someone's cell phone's going off. All right. There we go. Let's choose a brush size right about there. You know, for the mouth, let's choose something smaller, something a little bit more like that. So that's about the you know, the size we're going to choose. If you have something like this, see it starts out smaller and then it gets bigger. Start off with something small, make it a little bit bigger, and then up here make it a little bit bigger. And again, using control and option just makes that really quick. So let's start off with the cheek areas. And this is on, you know, it's a soft light layer. If you mess up, it's not a big deal. This is not the easiest thing in the world, but it's not the hardest thing either. And generally, I want to start off with the cheeks and kind of decide, this is going to decide, you know, where the brightest part of my image is. Okay, and there we go. That's starting to look decent right there. Now, if you go too much, like I probably went a little bit too much, you can just grab your eraser tool. I would recommend for your eraser tool to use just the same exact tool that you're using for the brush tool and kind of erase a little bit up there. There we go. So that's the good start of our dodging and burning. And we're going to start in with our brush now and start painting right over here. You can see I made my brush a bit smaller for that bit of detail there. A little bit larger here to kind of like smooth that back out to the larger area. There we go. And then a little bit smaller, kind of like fade that in there. A little bit larger. See, we want to bring this highlight into the regular cheek highlight, so we're going to use a slightly larger brush, kind of fade that one into there. And then we'll go a little bit smaller again, kind of paint that in there. There we go. So what we've got here is basically just painted that highlight into the skin. And if I had only done the cheek, like it would have not really looked good. But since we're going to do everything to that level, it's going to wind up looking exactly how we want it. So we're just going to start going with this and see what we can do. All right, let's do, you know, some highlights here on the forehead. The trick is you don't want all your brushes to be big. Like that's not going to give you the highlight that you want, right? You want to do like this, for instance. We'll choose like a large brush to get some highlight in there. But if I choose a small brush and go in there, can you see how like that adds a little bit of detail that looks real? Like that little bit of a harsh line makes it look like it's real. That's like a hard highlight in the middle of the rest of the highlight. So that's a good technique to kind of just, you know, make sure it looks real, is to add that like small little hard highlight, you know, inside of the rest of it. And don't worry, like if this isn't, you know, if it's not exactly what you want right off the bat, because you can just change it at any time. It's on a new layer, so you don't have to, you know, you don't have to stick with what you got. All right, let's make this a bit brighter. And you can see I want this to kind of fade out there. So I'm kind of painting it bright, but it's too bright here. So I'm just going to grab that eraser tool with a nice big eraser brush and kind of fade that back. Okay. So that's what we've got going on now. All right. I want to stay away from the eyes real quick. We're going to do those in just a little bit. I'm staying away from the eyes just because it's a little bit smaller detail, and we're going to do that independently. All right. And we'll go around with the nose here. Kind of create this highlight that's going to go right around the nose. All right, and a little guy right there as well. It's turning this off and on so you guys can see what we've got going on. And I'm starting off with the lights. You can see there's a highlight that kind of comes like this. So we're going to just kind of go back and forth with that a little bit. Cool. I'm starting off with the highlights. You can paint highlight and shadow, by the way, at the same time. Like I'm just kind of doing one at a time, just to show you guys. All right, and erase that out a little bit there. Great. Highlight again. We have one that kind of comes right down that area there. So we're just going to paint this in. All right, and then we have a shadow here, and then we have another highlight. So I want to enhance that other highlight as well. There we go. You can kind of see how that gets enhanced there. Same thing here. We have a shadow, and see we have a highlight, and then a shadow, and then a highlight up again. So there's a highlight that kind of comes, right up here, and then it kind of comes out like that too, right? And then I'm going to stay away from the eyes right now. I'll come back and do that again. There's a highlight right there, and we want to fade this out. So again, we'll just grab the eraser tool and fade that out just a little bit more. Okay. Fade that out. Let's play around with the ears as well. So I'm on the same layer. If you guys feel more comfortable creating, new layers every time you do this, that's totally cool too. I'm just choosing the same layer. I'm going to definitely have more than one, dodging and burning layer by the end of this, but for now I'm just choosing one. All right, highlight, a little bit of highlight there, kind of come down and create your highlight there as well. All right, we'll stay away from the neck for now. Go a little bit, create a highlight there. Nice large brush, create a highlight there. All right, and I'm gonna grab my eraser tool, kind of erase it down there from there. All right, and I'm even gonna go all the detail you want. Like really, the more time you spend with this sort of thing, the better you're gonna get. The better your result is gonna be. So this is not something that you wanna rush, because this is really, the secret of the whole effect here. All right, kind of painting in right above the lip. There we go. All right, and all right, our little highlights and things like that here. And you can see that highlight is just a little bit too much there. So I'm going to just grab my eraser tool and there we go, erase that away. All right, so this is just highlight on their face. So this is basically just half of the effect here. And you can see already what a nice treatment it really has. And I'm just going to keep going with this. Like this is not something, I wouldn't consider it at all done here right now. This is just a nice base layer. Like if you want to go and enhance everything more, like you can totally do that. And it'll be, it'll be good to, it's good to start off with kind of like a base. And then if you want to go crazy with it, do that on another layer. So get a base that you're happy with. That looks pretty good there. And then just go crazy with it on another layer. So let's choose that. I'm going to create a new layer here. I'm going to hit Shift Backspace again, fill it with 50% gray, and we're going to start dodging burning. Before we do that, I'm just going to change this layer from normal so you can see what this looks like. All right, that's what it looks like. The reason you can see some of the areas that are, there we go, that are like skin underneath is because of the, is because I erased a few parts away. So that's basically what this looks like. That's what I've done with my brush tool there. All right, let's change this back from normal to soft light and turn this back on. Soft light, and this will be soft light as well. Okay, so we're going to paint over it again, and now we're going to go for the neck here. All right, and we're still at the same settings here. So again, we talked about earlier here, starting with a smaller brush in these little areas like that. Moving on to something a little bit bigger, and then a little bit bigger, and then a little bit bigger as we go on. So we have a transition that goes from small to large here. It's important to kind of pay attention to that sort of thing, like the size of your transitions here. Because if it was a small transition, like all the way up, it just really wouldn't look the same. It would, I'll just show you guys what it would look like. All right, new layer. We'll fill that with 50% gray, change this from normal to soft light, and there we go. Oh, you know what? I was painting with gray, or sorry, I was painting with skin color. I wasn't even painting with black and white. I'm like, oh, that's why it's not as strong. So let's start off with white, and if I just did a small transition all the way up, so we have a small transition there, and all the way up. Like you see at the bottom, it looks right, but here at the top, it's like, what? That doesn't look right at all. So that's why we'd have to have like a larger brush there to kind of take care of that. All right, there we go. And this layer I painted on, let's just change this back to normal so I can see. You can see I was painting with some skin color there by accident. So let's just change this to soft light. We'll just keep going with it. Why not? Doesn't look bad. That's all it really matters, if it looks good or not. All right, and then create a small light right there. Okay, so you can see right then what I did is I painted a little bit, but my brush was too small, so it looked weird, like it looked like I was trying to create something. What I want to do is choose a larger brush and kind of come in and enhance that and get that as well, and it's gonna be more appropriate for, you know, the area that I'm actually painting. So a lot of this is, you know, like choosing the appropriate brush size. So that's why I would recommend using that keyboard shortcut with your, you know, your fingers on. I just keep my left hand on Control and Option, so I can just kind of paint this and kind of bring it up and down if I need to. All right, and bring that in there. And I'm going to enhance, you can't see her collarbone very much, but I'm just going to enhance it a little bit more. A little bit with a highlight there. And then we're going to go back and add a shadow. So right now I'm just doing all my highlights. This is, you can do that if you want to. Create all your highlights first and then your shadows. Or you can just do them both at the same time. In which case, what I would recommend is you can hit X to switch back and forth between your highlights and shadows. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that in a minute. All right, and here we go. Highlights on our hand here. Let's make those a little bit bigger. Again, larger for this area of the hand, and then coming in, we're going to get a little bit smaller for a little bit of detail there. There we go. And I just hit undo real quick because what I painted on didn't really look that good. There we go. Let's just dodge the fingernails real quick. Okay, cool. And I'm just going to zoom out and kind of see everything that I've done. Like this is just, that's too much. So I'm going to erase that a little bit more. Erase that guy a little bit more as well. Okay, cool. And again, that's basically just dodging, and there's really no burning involved. So let's go ahead and start burning. I'm going to do again, we'll fill with a 50% gray layer. Change this from normal down here to soft light. All right, and then we're just going to use our brush tool. And now I'm going to paint black. And again, we're going to paint at a flow of 10%. You know what? For the black, I'm going to bring this flow even farther down. So I'm going to hit like Shift 0.5, and that's going to bring our flow to 5%. Black is a little bit more powerful. Like it's just, you really don't want to go too hard with the blacks because that'll like really start to carve away your, like you can make half of the effect with the highlights, but you know, it's like, let me just create an example here. All right. So if you have a highlight here, so it's like, you know, flat ground, and then you have a highlight there, and that's basically what your thing would look like. Okay. By adding black on the other side, you basically make it look like, you know, you have something like that. So it makes it makes your highlight look even twice as tall, because it's, you know, it's not compared with the baseline here. It looks like it's compared with the baseline there. So just painting white, you can get highlight. When you paint black, it really will exaggerate that. So it's really good to do painting black, but again, you're gonna be enhancing those differences quite a bit more. So just be a little bit careful with that. All right, there we go. And it's totally just a style. Like, this is a stylization kind of thing that's going on here, guys. You know, you don't feel like you have to do like exactly this, or like if you like things to be more enhanced or less enhanced, like that's totally cool. Like you get to do whatever you want. All right. There we go. And kind of painting in black as well. So you can see that just, it helps to carve out areas a little bit more. All right, and you can kind of erase it down in some areas, like if the transition from, you know, this shadow to like where it shouldn't exist, I usually just grab an eraser tool. So like that, and paint it down to there, and then just grab an eraser tool, kind of erase away the bottom, so it's not as prevalent there. All right, and something nice and deep, like you can definitely paint in there. All right, and we'll just make that little shadow area there. Okay, this here on the eye, I think I did a little bit too much, so I'm gonna go back to the layer with where that is. Okay, which is this layer here, and I'm just gonna grab the eraser tool and just kind of erase that away a little bit. There we go, looks a little bit more natural. All right, and we'll just grab our brush tool again and start to paint. You might notice that it will change, it'll start to change some color when you do this. So what we're gonna wind up doing is going back and kind of recoloring some of these areas as well. And that's gonna just help everything to kind of like blend together and look a little bit more natural. All right, like it tends to desaturate and things like that, which we don't really wanna do. Cool, so there we have, these three layers. Let's just go ahead and group our dodging and burning, so we can see the before and the after with that. And I think it's a good exercise to kind of turn these things off and on to see like, okay, is this what I want here? Like, is this the effect that I'm going for? Is it too much in some places? Is it not enough in some places? Because generally you just want everything to match. Okay, what I'm gonna do is just, we've created these layers mostly focusing on one being light and one being dark. I'm going to show you guys basically how I would do this here. Change this to soft light. Usually I just do dark and light on the same layer. So let's just do that, and I'm going to use X to go back and forth between them. So I'm just going to go in here and start, you know, enhancing things a little bit more, kind of blending things out. All right, we haven't done the eyes just yet. All right, kind of connect that area from, you know, this to the highlight. Let's use 10% flow. All right, that could be a little bit darker up there. We have that nice brow here. I'm gonna just see if I can mimic that on the other side a little bit. Even though a lot of that, you know, it's already in highlight, I do want to mimic it a little bit more. And, you know, I'm kind of skipping around a lot because we want to get like this effect as a whole, you know, we don't want to just do it to some areas and not other areas. All right, that's a little bit too dark, too light, so I'm just, you know, darken that down. All right, so you can see I'm switching between black and white to kind of get my shadows and my highlights as I want them. Some shadow there, some highlight there. All right, we'll make that brush a little bit smaller. I'm going to use the rotate technique here, just because it's going to make it a little bit easier for me to paint at that angle. It was a kind of a weird angle. So R for rotate, and then you just kind of paint this in, paint black on either side of that, and it's going to sell that highlight a little bit more. All right, and R back around. There we go. You can see that highlight on her lip there. All right, and we'll just paint with black right there. Again. All right, and if it's too much, I just grab my eraser tool and just kind of erase it away a little bit. Cool. You can even do things like on the popsicle as well. I'm going to bring this so it's like just about vertical. If you want to do this, this is kind of cool. You can hit Command R to bring up your rulers and then bring a guide. Oh, my guide is diagonal. Never mind. Don't do that. That's silly. I forgot that it would do that. But you can use, when you're painting, dodging and burning, or anytime you use a brush tool, you can hold down Shift and it'll only go like up and down, left and right, or at a 45. So what I did here is I just rotated my canvas, so like up and down would actually be like this on here. So I can go just up and down here. So like paint black, hold down Shift and just go up and down. Paint white, hold down Shift and go up and down. So I do have like really nice clean lines now. Here we go. Let's just hold down Shift and go up and down. So my lines are, they're exactly straight. Let's just change it back to normal so I can show you guys. My lines really are like very straight. I don't have to worry about, my brush being that straight, but I'm not able to restrict that angle. So I rotated my canvas and then I restricted just straight up and downward movement, which allowed me to do, just the popsicle, which is kind of cool as well. All right, definitely looking a little bit better. Yeah, so you can see it's just kind of like blending in everything a little bit more there. Okay, let's go ahead and do the eyes because that's a really good area as well. Change that to 50% gray. We'll change this to soft light. Okay, and for the eyes, you can zoom in a little bit more because you do want to see the detail here. All right, so if our highlight is about that size, like you can go ahead and make your brush about that size as well. Just paint a highlight in the middle of the eye there. There we go, and come in with the shadows. So I'm just hitting X here to go back and forth. Paint some shadow detail in there. Some highlight and then some shadow under it. It'll just make it look like, exaggerate a little bit more. It's still a little too much, so I'm going to grab the eraser tool and kind of bring that down a little bit. There we go. And then shadow directly under that. So we can see that's, going in there with the eye. And let's get the other one as well. A little bit smaller of a brush is going to help make that look more like a crease in there. All right. You can see how that looks like a little, like my brush was too small there, so it looks like out of place. But if I choose a larger brush, it's going to make it look more like, her eyes actually kind of causing that eyelid to go up a little bit. All right, I'm going to darken down the eyebrows a little bit because we did paint some white over top of those. And that was lightening them up a little bit too much. All right. So there's our eye detail. We're just going to zoom out and make sure we still like that. All right, whatever I did down here, I don't really like. And here it's just a little bit too much. So we're going to grab the eraser tool, erase that away a little bit, and I'm going to erase that away a little bit. I can do the effect that I wanted. We just need to choose a little bit larger of a brush. There we go. Cool. And I'm just going to erase away this right up there and right down there. A little bit less black. All right, so really nice detail there in the eyes. And let's just continue. We'll do the same thing with the ears too. All right. And you will get fast at this. I know this is taking a long time right now for two reasons. One, because it's a tutorial and I just want to explain everything I do. But if you were doing this on your own, like without, having someone take like step by step, you would do it a lot faster than this. Like it wouldn't take you as long, because literally you just go in and, paint in highlight and paint in shadow. That's a little bit too much there. So I'm just going to grab your eraser tool and kind of erase it away a little bit. There we go. And yeah, we're definitely looking really good. Okay, well, I think that's okay for now. Let's just create, let's see, grab a little bit more highlight. Shadow on the other side of that highlight. Highlight there. Erase that away a little bit. All right, that looks great. So we've added all this detail. Basically, this is our dodging and burning, and this is all the detail that we've added with our dodging and burning. So you can see it really is quite a bit, and that's part of the effect. So without this layer here, so this is kind of cleaning everything up. Without this, you can see it looks a little bit messier, and then this just makes everything clean. So that's our plastic look, is keeping the skin like really clean and smooth, and then adding the detail over top. So if you just do the detail, you're gonna get something that looks a bit crazy. You need to make sure you start off with something clean to begin with, and that's gonna help out a lot. Okay, well, let's go ahead and start working a little bit more with our colors and things like that, and we'll just move on to the next step. And we can see, let's just turn this off and on. We can see what a difference we've already made. Huge difference. I think it looks great. So let's get a little bit more detail in the hair. What I'm going to do is, above everything, we're just going to grab a curves adjustment layer. So this layer, by the way, that's just the detail. So if we were painting skin, you want to make sure you do that below that layer. But if it's above that layer, you don't really need to worry about that. Okay. Or rather, if you're just doing color, you don't really need to worry about doing it below this layer. It won't make a difference. Okay, so I want to include a little bit more detail here in the hair. I'm just going to grab my curves adjustment layer. We're going to bring this up a little bit. If you want a little bit more saturation in there, what I would recommend doing is go on your red channel, hitting this little hand button, and going here into the hair, and you can see it's going to follow along in my histogram. So I'm going to click right there, and then you can just use your up and down arrows on your keyboard. So I'm going to hit up one time, and then twice. And then we're going to go for green as well, and then hit up once. All right, so that's going to put some color into the hair as well as brightening it up. What I'm going to do is hit Command I. That's going to invert my layer mask, and then we're just going to go in and paint with white on our layer mask, just like we did before. All right, and that's going to bring us some more of the detail there in the hair, so it's not all, dark. You can see it's not saturated enough, right? Like we did add some color, but we need to add a little bit more. So we'll just go back to our red layer and hit up a couple times. That's going to help by putting a little bit of red in there. Let's put some more green in there as well. If you're wondering why we didn't use blue, well, we don't really want a lot of blue in our hair. You can drag this down and it's going to put more yellow. You can see that. But it's probably going to wind up looking pretty weird. If you drag it up, you'll put more blue, but we don't want that as well. So I'm just going to stay away from the blue channel. I might hit down one time. Just like, this is relatively subtle. Like you can do this subtly and it'll make a big difference. Let's go with our RGB channel, and I'm going to make this a little bit less bright there as well. So if I recommend, if you are going to be brightening an area like this up, just keep in mind that shadows tend to have less saturation than highlights do. So if you are bringing an area from shadow back into highlight, I would not recommend just dragging your RGB up, because if you do that, it is gonna brighten that area up, but it's gonna brighten a less saturated area than what you want. So you have to make sure to like resaturate it basically by adding your color back. All right, and for the shadow area, I'm going to paint black just like this to get like a very large brush going on, and that's just going to paint it away. So my layer mask looks something like that. Nothing too crazy there, but it just helps to add a little bit more color and things like that to the hair. Okay, the next thing I want to do is look at the color between her face, which is a bit red, and here's a bit desaturated. So we're going to make a curves adjustment layer there. Go over here and click on our red channel, and just click there in their skin and drag that up a couple times. Hit Command I to invert that, and then we're going to paint white on our layer mask, and this is going to just bring a little bit more of that color into her skin. All right, to help match her face a little bit better. You can see it was kind of gray to begin with. And this is, it's really delicate, these steps here. If you don't get it like exactly how you want it to begin with, it's not a big deal. Like you can always come back and redo this. You can change the opacity and things like that. And if, like, it took me a while to even see that her face is more red than her body. Like if you didn't see that right away, it's like something that needs to be fixed. It's not a huge deal, but if you do see it, and you can fix it and you want to fix it, that's how you do it. All right, the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to grab an adjustment layer. We're going to go to hue saturation, and I'm going to drag my saturation up, and we're going to grab our hue and drag that over here. There we go, and kind of play with our lightness as well. Okay, now what I want to do is basically just select out the background area. So I'm going to hit Command I on this. We're going to use our magic wand to kind of select this area out, and my tolerance is 36 pixels, which is more than enough. There we go. And on this layer mask, I'm going to hit Command I, which is going to bring that back to being visible. Okay, very cool. And we're just going to go in here and kind of paint this white. Zoom in so we can see what we're doing here. All right, and adding, some of this to the background, like I'm gonna go in and probably change the settings on the hue saturation layer in just a second. But adding this into the background just kind of makes it a little bit more contrasty. It makes it pop a little bit more. You can see right there, I might need to expand my layer mask out a little bit. So I'm gonna click on here. We're gonna go select and then to refine mask. And we'll just take all these down to 0. All right, and we're going to shift our edge out a little bit, and I'm going to bring my feathering up just a tiny bit. There we go, and we can see the original. It's just going to push it out a little bit. There we go. So it should look like it's, kind of getting all this detail there. All right. And that's a bit too much there, so we're just going to bring that down. Okay, let's click on here and we can change, maybe play with our saturation a little bit more. I'm going to hit this colorize button. I'm not sure what's going on here with our, I think that's just how this screen is rendering right now. Yeah. I think this is how our screen is running. Let me just make a stamp visible layer and see if that goes rid of that. No, it does not. Whatever's going on here, I'm not really sure what that is. I'm going to try to change my bit mode in just a little bit, but that's just looking a bit weird. It's not part of the layer mask. It's just kind of happening as a way of, what the screen is rendering right now. It could be due to my resolution. I have to change the resolution of my screen for these tutorials, so that shouldn't happen with you guys. All right, the next thing I want to do is, that looks pretty good. We're going to draw a little bit more attention to our subject here. So I'm going to do that by creating a new layer, and I'm going to hit G for my gradient tool. We're going to choose a linear gradient, and I'm going to choose black for fading to transparent. So we're going to choose this, and I'm going to drag from the top all the way down there, and then from the left to the right. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is double click here, and I'm going to choose my layer style. Let's just bring that visible there so you can see. I'm going to hold down Alt or Option and tell this to not be visible where the underlying layer is lighter. And to do that, just hold down Alt or Option and click over here and just drag from right to left. Okay, basically this is just not showing up where the highlights are on the underlying layer, which is great because we're rimlit, all of our highlights are, you know, that basically the edge of everything is highlight. All right, so masking this out is going to be very, very easy now. I just have to use a layer mask here and just like go pretty quick. I don't have to worry about my edges at all because the blend diff already took care of my edges. I'm going to choose a harder edge brush here just to go, you know, here at the edges. There we go. Kind of just take care of those. All right, and this is a little bit too much color here in our hair up here, so I'm just going to take that amount of color down a little bit. All right, cool. We're definitely looking really good. This is just kind of weird. I might in a second fix that, even though I really don't think that it'll be showing up on your when you do this, but that little blotchiness is just looking weird. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and fix that as well. Perfect, we're looking good. Let's just lower the opacity of these blacks just a little bit more. Okay, I want to select out these highlights and exaggerate them even more. So I'm going to make a new layer, and we're going to go over here to our channels, and we're going to look at our channels. I'm going to click on our red channel, green channel, and our blue channel. And your blue channel should have the greatest difference between highlights and shadows in your image. So you can see the red channel, you can see a lot of detail in there. I'm going to do all this with this layer invisible. It's just doing something weird right now. Okay, so red channel, green channel, and blue channel. You can see again the greatest difference between highlights and shadow with your blue channel. So we're going to duplicate our blue channel. Okay, and then I'm going to hit Command L, which is levels command, and bring this from left to the right. And what this is going to do is it's just going to select out my highlights here. There we go. Let's hit OK. And now that my highlights are selected, I'm going to command click on this layer, and that's going to turn our highlights into a selection. So everything lighter than black basically becomes a selection. So this is all selection now. We're going to go back to our layers, and here on a new layer, I'm just going to hit Shift Delete, and we're going to fill this with white. Okay, and we're going to hit Command D to deselect. So basically, it just took all my highlights and filled them with white, which is cool. You can duplicate this a couple times if you want to, especially, you know, in areas like here where you want even more effect. So we've got this duplicated 3 times. It's a little too much. We'll just delete one of those layers. I'll put a layer mask on this layer and invert that layer mask, and then I can paint white right over here. So it's just going to kind of brighten up those areas. Okay, let's do the same thing. I want to select out this blue copy again, and on a new layer, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit Command Delete, which fills with white. We could just use a keyboard shortcut. I'm going to do that like 3 or 4 times. Actually, you know what? We're going to delete this. I'm going to just enhance this a little bit more. So I'm going to hit Command L again. We're going to bring up our brights, but I'm going to bring up my darks even more this time. This should just be getting the highest of the highlights here. Okay, so let's command click this now. And on a new layer, again, we're going to command click a couple times. So this is just the highest of the highlights here. And what we're going to do, I'm just going to give this a little bit of a blur. And that's going to help give this like plastic effect look. So we can see we selected just the highlights and give them a blur. Now we're just going to take our opacity down to about 30 or 40%. All right, and just group all those layers. Maybe just take the opacity down on all those layers. All right, and that's just given like the nice shine plastic look. Perfect. Okay, now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna create some detail, like added detail on the skin. And to do this, we're gonna create a new layer. I've included this brush for you guys. It's just a bunch of little specks, and we're gonna paint in white where the highlights are, and a dark color where the shadows are. So what you do is choose, so these specks are about the same size as your skin pores, and just click a lot of times, there we go, where your highlights are. And what this is going to do is it's going to add little like specks of detail in those highlights, and then it's going to be our job to kind of like layer mask them away. But it's a really great effect because it really helps sell all this like fake you know, highlights and shadows you added. It's going to make it look like they're real, which is pretty awesome, really. All right, there we go. And we can even do, well, the skin pores don't look like that on your hands, so we'll stick to the face. Some on the nose there as well. Okay, so that obviously doesn't look too great, but what we're going to do, I'm going to double click this. I'm going to just hold Alt or Option and tell this to only be visible where the underlying layer is lighter. So we're just going to grab the darks and kind of bring this up. Okay, and what that did is, you can see, made those only visible where the underlying layer is lighter. So it added detail only to the lighter areas of the underlying layer. I'll just undo that so you guys can see kind of the before and the after. There we go. You can see especially like up here, and drag this all the way there and that one there. It's just kind of like helps everything blend in. All right, something like that's cool. Now let's put a layer mask on there, and with the same layer, I'm gonna go up to Window and then down here to Brush, and I'm just gonna bring my spacing up a little bit. There we go. And then we're just gonna paint black a little bit. And having your spacing up is just makes these dots a little farther apart. And I'm using the same brush on my layer mask. The reason is because I don't want to just like blanket these, you know, either visible or not visible, like with a regular brush. I want these to look like they, you know, like it's shining less and less as you get farther away from the highlights, and less little dots, but not the dots less visible. So my layer mask actually looks like this, and that's just making less dots visible as I get farther away from my highlights. And that's just going to make the effect look a lot more real. All right, there we go, because that's what actually happens. Cool, that's looking good. Now you can't have the effect without doing the same thing with your shadows. So I'm going to grab my brush tool here, and we're going to change this from normal to multiply. And there we go. Start painting in with our shadows a little bit more. Let's just close that out. Close our properties out so we can see this. All right, and just going in here with our shadows and adding these like details. They look, you know, like little like freckles or something like that. But even just having these is, you know, it really can make a big difference about, you know, how much this looks real. Because this stuff will show up more in the shadows, and the lights will show up more in the highlights. All right, there we go. Cool, so we've added all that detail. I'm gonna double click here and tell this again to not be visible now where the underlying layer is lighter. So Alt or Option, click from right to left, and we're just gonna kind of fade that in. There we go, and we've added all that detail, and it should look like regular skin texture now. Let's just show the before and after real quick. So here's the before and the after with both. It's a little bit flat looking, and now it looks like, you know, actual skin detail, which is great. It'll help sell that effect a little bit more. All right, I'm going to group those two and just kind of lower the opacity of this just a little bit. Make this layer visible again. I don't know what's going on with it. I'm going to try a different method for coloring our background. Not that I hate that. It's just not looking good. Okay, let's try a different method. I'm going to grab a hue. Sorry, we're just going to grab a curves layer. I'm going to pump up the green in our curves, and I can see it's going to give us the same issue here. I think it's just however, you know, the screen is rendering. All right. I don't know. Worst case scenario, you just color that with like a brush tool. It looks okay like this. I did want to change the color, but I'm not going to now just because it's given me an issue. However, this image was compressed or something like that. That's given me the issue there. All right, let's go to, you know what? We are going to try to fix that because it's just, but we'll do that closer to the end. Okay, so we're definitely looking good. Let's just grab a curves adjustment layer. I want to grab my brights and kind of bring this up here in the middle. We're going to make a selection around here around the face. Hit Command I, and that's just going to invert whatever's in the selection. So it's going to make that darker. Deselect and then hit Command I again. So deselect is Command D, by the way. Or you can go to select and down to deselect. Okay, and then I'm just going to give this Gaussian blur. There we go. And that's going to help make the center a little bit brighter, and we're just going to bring down our opacity there. Very nice. We're definitely looking great. So another thing that we're going to do now is go in and enhance this detail. So remember that action I had earlier that I used to basically get the skin detail. We're going to do the same thing. So we're going to go to Window and down to Actions. Okay, and then I'm going to hit this alternate high pass. We're going to hit play on that again. All right, it's going to do its thing and then be done. Now this time what we're going to be doing is using that to sharpen. So I'm going to make this layer, we're going to open that group up. I'm going to make this layer invisible now. Okay, so this layer, well, we just go ahead and delete it. So now we're using to sharpen. What I want to do is I'm going to hit Command J 3 times. So make that a duplicate 3 times, and now we're got like super sharpen. I'm going to keep one of these layers on regular, and I'm going to shift click the 3 of those layers, hit Command G to group those together, and then I'm going to add a layer mask to that, and then I'm going to hit Command I on the layer mask, basically just making a black layer mask now. And now it's my job to just, I'm going to choose a regular brush again, same one I provided with you. We're going to paint white on these areas here, and this is going to give us that added like super sharpness. And you want to kind of be careful with where you do these, use this effect, like more on the eyes and things like that than anywhere else, because that's, you know, it's just going to really sharpen them. If you're curious on what it looks like on everything, you could just hold down the Shift button, click on your layer mask, and kind of see the before and after with that. All right, I might use a little bit on the face and things like that, but mostly I want to just use this right here on the eyes. Okay, so that's sharpening basically everything, which is perfect. Awesome. So one thing we're going to do, just to kind of finish this up, is I'm going to take this entire photo and we're going to just duplicate this now. So I'm going to make Shift Option Command E. This is a stamp visible layer. I'm going to show you guys how to save these things for the web, which is going to help a lot. It's going to help make them look exactly how you want them to. So we're going to hit F a couple times to make this a little bit smaller. All right, I'm going to right click here and we're going to go to Duplicate Layer. I'm going to choose New and hit OK. All right, let's just change this image mode to 8 bits. Okay, so now it's just a regular 8-bit image, and hopefully I can color the background a little bit more now. Okay, so this is now set to 8 bits, and I want to change my image size. And generally when I post something to the web, I just change this to be an image size. I always keep my original, but I always change the image size to give it a width of like 1,000 pixels. So anything you put on the web, Facebook or Flickr or whatever like that, it's 1,000 pixels wide is usually good enough. Okay, so now that this is 1,000 pixels wide, what I'm going to do is just add a little bit more sharpening, and that's going to be sharpened to the resolution that it would display at, because the sharpening at full size is good if you're looking at something very large, but if you're looking at something small, you need a different level of sharpening. Okay, so I'm going to hit Command J on that. You could run that high pass alternate action, but that's actually designed for a larger image. So if you're using a smaller image, I would hit Command J and then hit Shift Command U. That's going to desaturate your colors. Okay, and then we're going to change this from normal down here to linear light. All right, and then we're going to go to Filter. We're going to go to Other, and here to High Pass. Okay, and here you're going to choose, just hit your up arrow until it starts to look good. There we go. Here you're going to choose another bit of sharpening that's going to happen over all your other sharpening. There we go. And you can see it really did super sharpen. And then you're going to put a layer mask on that, and then do basically the same thing that you did earlier. Keep the eyes and like the mouth and things like that visible. Maybe like a little bit here in the hair. All right, so it's like super sharpened, you know, especially right there where the eyes and things like that are. All right, and that's what we want. If I want to fix this color, because I kind of do, it's not the color that I want here. I'm just going to try grabbing my brush tool, painting over there, and changing this from normal down here to color. Let's go to hue. Never mind. It's just not going to look good no matter what I do with this background. I think it has to do with how this image was compressed. When you're working on your own images, I compressed it to a TIFF to send it to you. You guys will probably be working on just like an image straight out of RAW, which is not going to do the same thing. If I had to do this again, what I would probably do is just paint this as more of like a normal, like with a regular paintbrush. All right. And this is, I'm only doing this to get it, like, you know, to kind of get around a problem that shouldn't have even been existent. All right, there we go. And then you could just choose like a slightly lighter color, maybe a little bit more yellow. You won't have to do this. I'm having to do this because of my poor file compression or something. I really have no idea why it's doing that. If you guys do, let me know, because I don't want that to happen again. And let's just make a selection here. There we go. Bring the opacity down on that a little bit, and we'll go to select here to refine mask. There we go. So that's more of the look that I wanted. Just for a little bit of the color I wanted to change because it helps give a little bit more attention to the actual popsicle itself, and that's what we wanted. So that's it, guys. That's our tutorial for the day, and I hope you really liked it. We got a kick butt image at the end, and use this to create awesome Jill Greenberg style images. And remember, the lighting is very important to get this sort of effect, and also the dodging and burning and skin smoothing to start it off with. Thanks so much, guys. I can't wait to see your images as well as this one, and I'll flirt you later. Bye, guys.